Hello, I am so excited to have all of you here. Wherever you're joining us in the world, welcome to Inclusive Product Week. I'm your host, Diane Lebenz, Director of Design at Code for San Jose and UX UI designer at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. One thing that makes each and every one of you so special is your desire to make the world a better place. You could have decided to do anything else with your evening, and I want to take a moment to recognize that and say thank you. Now, tomorrow marks the 10th anniversary of Global Accessibility Awareness Day, a movement created by our keynote speaker, Jennison, who you'll hear from in a bit, with the purpose to get more people like you thinking, talking, and learning about digital inclusion and access. As designers, developers, marketers, project managers, and technologists, we all have a responsibility and a duty to ensure that no one is left out of the experiences that we design and build. So how do we do this? Well, if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that everyone's stories mattered. From the collective awakening of state-sanctioned murder of Black lives, to the surge in violence against Asian Americans, to headlines of millions of Americans being excluded from digital experience, it's clear that giving space to diverse stories helps us empower and humanize others. We have a wonderful lineup of speakers to kick off the day, all with amazing stories and perspectives to share. We hope you're inspired to roll out that digital welcome mat. In addition to 30 wonderful talks, we have lots of other areas for you to check out. If you need a break in between sessions, check out our Zen zones located in the expo area. There, you can listen to nature sounds, stretch, or practice yoga. We also have networking sessions where you can connect with other attendees, either one-on-one in the networking tab in Hopin, or from 7 to 9 on Wednesday and Thursday, you can do group networking sessions. If you'd like to learn more about the types of civic projects that we build here at Code for San Jose, check out the project demos in the expo areas. And you're definitely not going to want to miss tomorrow's after party event, which is happening from 8:30 to 9:30. We have some incredibly fun events planned, and so you can check more information on that in the reception area. And finally, join us in Slack, where you can continue conversations after a talk has ended. Great. And now I would love to welcome our guest of the hour. It is both my honor and pleasure to introduce Jennison Asuncion. Jennison is the head of Accessibility Awareness Engineering Evangelism at LinkedIn and the co-founder of Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Jennison has also started accessibility camps in Toronto, Los Angeles, and in the Bay Area. He has an impressive array of awards, including being decorated by Queen Elizabeth II with the Diamond Jubilee Medal. And just so you know, during our fireside chat, if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A panel, where we'll be taking questions and answers after the session has ended. Great. And it is with that, I would love to welcome to the stage Jennison. All right. Waiting for Jennison to get on stage. And while we're waiting, go ahead and drop where you're from and what you're excited about during Inclusive Product Week.
God.
All right, Jennison.
Can you see me? Question mark.
No, your camera is not on.
Can you hear me though?
Oh. Yep, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Hello, everyone. Well, this is actually very good that you can't see me because I can't see you either. Have you told everyone our little secret?
I have not.
So everyone, just so you all are aware, while I'm figuring stuff out, I'm actually completely blind. So, and I am using my screen reader with Hopin. And if anyone from Hopin is listening, you might you might want to test things out with a screen reader. Not everything is as it should be. So bear with us as we go through this. But you can hear me. That's the important thing.
Yes, we can absolutely hear you.
So why don't we start with that? And I'm going to tinker around.
Okay.
So I have a bone to pick with you. I didn't know about this after party. I'm like stuck here in Las Vegas, getting ready to celebrate.
I don't know if I would ever say that I'm stuck in Las Vegas.
I'm here celebrating the 10th anniversary and a big announcement, which we'll be making tomorrow. Yeah, your after party sounds great. Why don't we get, in all seriousness, why don't we get started talking, and I will attempt to figure out the camera.
Absolutely. And how is Vegas going so far, Jennison?
It is nice. I'm indoors with air conditioning, so I'm happy. This is honestly Joe Devon, who's my co-founding partner on Global Accessibility Awareness Day, and myself cannot believe that we have made it to 10 years. This is our 10th anniversary. And for those of you who follow social media, please follow the hashtag GAAD, and you can learn all about that stuff. But yes, why don't you go ahead and ask me something that everyone would like to know about, and then I will suddenly appear visually for those who can see. For those who can't see, I will continue to not show.
Of course. Well, first of all, I'm so honored to have you on stage. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the invitation and for doing this. And word up to Code for San Jose for taking the lead. Certainly, there are other code brigades out there, and you were the ones who reached out. So thank you.
Yay! Amazing. So I don't know if anyone.
Did I just cause a controversy?
What was that?
Did I just cause a controversy by saying that?
No, you didn't.
Okay.
No, yeah, we'll take the badge of honor as being a pretty cool brigade. Thanks for that. I just wanted to take a moment to hear a bit about your background. So you grew up in Montreal, if I'm not mistaken?
I did. So I was born and raised in Montreal. And without betraying my age, we'll just say it was sometime in the 70s.
Okay.
When technology, honestly, as someone who's blind, so I lost my vision when I was a year and a half old. Mm-hmm. And so my first screen reading software, if you will, were my sister and my cousins who would read to me what's on the screen. I was pretty exposed to technology early on, but when I started getting integrated into quote unquote regular school back in grade 3 and 4, I had to use a manual typewriter and then switch to an electronic typewriter to produce work. Otherwise, people wouldn't be able to see it. So I went from that to using Braille computers. But my first computer was an Apple IIc with logo and the little turtle. And they told me, like, to make a square, it's FD40 RT90. And the punk that I was, I would change the numbers to see if my sighted teachers would say anything. And they wouldn't. So I was drawing all of these non-square things, and they would say, oh, that's a nice square. But it really wasn't a square, and I knew it.
That's so ridiculous.
I know. Why wouldn't they be honest with me?
Right. What did they do? That's so interesting, too, because I'm wondering if that's sort of related to some myths about blindness. I'm curious about some of the prevalent myths that you've encountered.
Yeah. So the biggest myth. So I'm a first generation immigrant. I'm Filipino Canadian. And like every other immigrant community, we are kind of hardwired to become doctor, lawyer, or engineer. Now, doctor was not going to be in the cards. And lawyer seemed like a lot of work. Now, engineer was interesting, but I had gotten feedback from quote unquote well-meaning professionals who told me, hey, Jennison, you're blind. Just be happy with passing math. Like don't ever consider excelling, because you should really become like a psychologist or something to do with people. And nothing against psychologists at all, or psychiatrists, or any of the people helping professions. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But to tell someone who's blind, a kid who's so impressionable, like, this is this is all you can do because you're blind. That played on me, and I ended up having math phobia and all kinds of stuff. I still what's the word I'm looking for? Persisted, and actually tried to do computer science twice. Once in CEGEP, which is community college back in Montreal, and then once again in university. And both times I made it through halfway through the first year, and I was like, this is not me. And so I would drop out, but I finished like my calculus and physics and stuff, and was able to quietly say like screw you, all of you well-meaning people.
Right.
And I think my window just opened unexpectedly. Maybe it's the ghost of one of those well-meaning professionals.
I think so.
Oh my God. Okay, but anyway, yeah. So like people with disabilities. Hopefully things have changed, but I've heard stories where, for example, they're not teaching blind kids Braille anymore because they think that that's not the in thing. But if you are one of those people, I'm just going to say stop it. Anyway, I don't want to get on a soapbox, so help me out here, Diane.
No.
I'm still playing with the camera, by the way.
Oh, no.
Hoppin, are you listening here? I'm using a screen reader and I can't turn on my camera.
Hoppin, we need accessibility features.
Oh, God. Thank you.
So I'm actually kind of curious, going back, how did you know that you wanted to go into computer science?
Sure. So it wasn't necessarily computer science, but I knew I wanted to work with technology somehow, because when I was 17, the CNIB, which is the big agency that helps folk with visual impairment in Canada, they used to have a program. They still do, but it's in a different format. But what they would do is they bring together 20 blind and visually impaired youth from across Canada together outside of Toronto, and we would just learn about different technology that would be helpful to us and about different careers. And for me, because I was fortunate enough that I did get exposed to the technology, one of the best things my mom did, socialization was a bit of a whatever, but she sent me to like this all boys Jesuit suit and tie high school where we learned like Latin and how to tie a tie and how to do public speaking. That stuff was great. The socialization was crap. But the long story short was I got exposed to technology is where I was going. And so when I went to this program, it's called the SCORE program, sponsored by the Gretzky family, much love to them. I was so impacted by observing other youth who were blind and low vision who had never been exposed to that type of technology before, and just watching them being impacted. And I said to myself, I needed to somehow get involved with that. I didn't know how, but somehow I wanted to get involved. And who knew this guy who ended up with a Bachelor of Arts in political science, who was going to become a spy or a counterintelligence guy, who ended up with a master's in educational technology, and much props to Concordia University in Montreal. I'm now in the Silicon Valley as an engineering leader working on accessibility at LinkedIn. I mean, you can't get more crazy than that, right?
Yes.
And I'm so happy, and I've been able to do stuff like co-founding Global Accessibility Awareness Day and all the other stuff you mentioned. And I still can't turn on my camera.
Oh, no, your camera's not on yet.
No. Help. Hop in. Come on now. Throw me a bone.
One day we'll figure it out. So speaking of LinkedIn, I think we were all curious, what does the head of accessibility engineering evangelism?
Yes.
Lots of words.
Yes. Well, I spend most of my time just saying my title.
Yeah.
So no,
how many of us can relate to that?
Right. So I did my title before this was a lot easier. It was engineering manager. Okay. So no, but what I do now, part of my job, so I'm part of engineering leadership, working on accessibility. I have other much more talented people than me who are working on accessibility as well. But for the purposes of this, I own training, so I make sure that all of our web, iOS, and Android engineers get the training they need, whether it's through our online training program our Accessibility Champions program, to ship accessible code. Or I also own all of our support mechanisms. So we have Slack channels, we have office hours daily, so that we have people come in to show their mocks, designers, or their early builds. And so I have one of the most talented people I work with, Moen Ahmed, who works with these engineers and designers and spot checks their work and points out the most egregious accessibility issues, with the idea that we show you one example of the issue and then you go back in there and test other examples of it. So that's part of my role. I also am the interpreter of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, version 2.1 at the AA standard. And I do things like this, which is amazing. I got to meet someone as amazing and as much as like an advocate of accessibility as you, Diane. And I also met Irina, and just so welcoming and such. And then the rest of my time, as leaders do, I spend in meetings, right?
Lots of meetings.
And I still can't turn on my camera. Hop in.
We need the accessibility team at LinkedIn to come help. Since you've been head of accessibility engineering evangelism at LinkedIn, I'm curious if you can share any of the some of the significant changes that you've seen, or sort of how that space has evolved.
Specifically at LinkedIn, I want to talk about one interesting thing. We introduced in the last year and a bit something called font scaling or dynamic type across our website and LinkedIn.com and our flagship apps on our Android and iOS. And when we did that, we knew that there's 15% of the world's population, and that's a conservative number, by the way, that self-identify, according to the World Health Organization, self-identify as having a disability or impairment of some kind. Okay. Now, so we were we didn't know how many people would use the font sizing, but we knew it had to be lower than that 15% if that was everyone who self-identifies having a disability or impairment. Well, our smart folks who track metrics and stuff, they looked, and what we found was that it was approximately 32% of people turned on or used on our iOS app this font scaling or dynamic type. And what that did was it proved a point which we have been evangelizing with our product folks and our design folks and elsewhere, that you design for one, you solve for one problem, if you will, but you extend to many, because there are people who don't identify as having a disability or impairment, but they might have a temporary disability. They might break an arm. So they might end up using voice recognition software for a period of time, or the keyboard. Or you might have someone who has a situational disability. Imagine trying to watch e-learning in a noisy factory or in a cafeteria or on a commuter train. You're going to turn on captioning, right? And then I don't know about you, Diane, but I'm getting old. And so as I get old, I'm completely blind, but I hear from people who can see that eyesight is one of the first things to go.
Yeah.
And so you don't consider yourself as having a disability or impairment, but you want fonts to be resized. So everyone, people with visual impairments, people who are just losing their vision because they're getting older, are using our font sizing capabilities. So that's the same with a lot of other things in accessibility. One other quick example I'll give is keyboard. If you are someone who's working in a back office, or if you're an engineer, you don't necessarily want to put your hands on the mouse. You want to keep your hands on the keyboard to be productive. If you can't get to every focusable element using your tab key and your arrow keys, you're not being productive, right? And then if you have a disability or impairment and you can only use a keyboard, like myself, I could tell you, I'm not going to out any websites or anything like that, but there are some where I literally can't complete a transaction because things aren't keyboard operable and navigable. There's a large hotel chain, which will remain nameless, that I cannot complete the transaction because there's a checkbox that says, "Do you accept all of our terms and conditions?" So I've gone through the painful process of finding the hotel, finding the room, and none of that stuff is accessible. But I've done all that stuff. I've entered my credit card number, and then I'm at the final step, and I have to just check that checkbox off. But the checkbox itself cannot be. I can't activate it with the space bar or the enter key, and I have to buck it out. So they don't get my money.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here in Las Vegas, Diane, and I'm I'm going to the Strip tonight.
Mm-hmm.
But good luck me finding a slot machine here where I, as someone who's completely blind, can use it independently, because all the slot machines that I've found on the Strip are all touch screen. So anyone who has trouble with their hands, or anyone who's completely blind like myself, we're going to have to just take our money elsewhere. I'll just bring it to the bar. I'd rather lose it in the casino, but I'm not allowed to, apparently. It's kind of like how I can't turn on my camera here on Hopin.
Right.
Sorry.
No, you bring up so many excellent points, Jennison. I know that when you and I were doing this run through, it really highlighted to me that accessibility and inclusion, I mean, even before this, is not just like an add-on feature.
No,
and
you have to think about it.
Yeah, exactly. And for those of you who love to carry 4 bags of groceries at once, like I do, temporary situational disability is such a big thing. Having the ability to use your phone with one hand, like you said, solve one problem for one to
Yeah.
many.
Solve for one, extend to many.
Yeah.
So, and I say that particularly to product managers. We're doing a lot in the accessibility world. We're doing a lot of kind of shift left work, and we spent a lot of time. I've been in accessibility now for since 2006, and we spent a lot of time with with engineers and designers. But a lot of us are now spending a lot more time with product managers who, arguably, they're looking for metrics and all kinds of things. But the one thing that seems to resonate with product managers is this idea of we're helping a lot of other people than people necessarily with disabilities or impairments who cannot be tracked. So it's kind of tough for your average product manager to see the value in solving for people with disabilities when we're not trackable.
Mm.
Kind of kind of like the people who developed this camera thing for Hopin.
Yeah. And I hope that doesn't like sit well with anyone here. Just the idea that like proving the value of giving everybody access. I mean, to really even just like highlight some of the impact a few months ago through, nope, I think I lost you, Jennison. I'll wait till he gets back on stage. But a few months ago at Code for San Jose, auditing government forms and running into all the different access issues that we were experiencing, which blocks people from taking on different services. Great. All right. Now wait a couple more minutes for Jennison to hop back on. And while we're waiting again, I'll just play a quick video and check in, make sure everyone's okay. Meanwhile, go ahead and drop any questions that you have so far in the chat, and tell us where you're from and what you're most excited about. All right, we are back. Jennison, your video is still off.
It's off again?
Just kidding.
Oh, we got it working. We had a little bit of backstage consultation. We got everything working. Hello, everyone.
It must be that Las Vegas Wi-Fi.
Well, yes. Well, we won't blame it on Hopin anymore.
Now we've shipped Blaine from Vegas to Hopin to Vegas.
Yes.
Great. Awesome. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that tomorrow marks the 10th anniversary of
I can't believe it.
Accessibility Awareness Day. Oh my goodness.
I can't believe it.
So I heard that a tweet started this giant Google movement. Is that true?
Let me tell you what happened. So,
Okay.
so picture it. Santa Monica, November 2011. This back-end developer, web developer named Joe Devon, who is also Canadian, had just had the most frustrating experience with his dad. His dad was one of the smartest people in the world, knew all kinds of stuff, but like I was mentioning before, he was getting older, and his vision, Joe's dad's vision was starting to get bad, but he still wanted to be able to bank independently. So he didn't want to go into the branch, and telephone banking wasn't going to work. So Joe thought, well, why don't we try online banking? That should be easy because it's supposed to be available to everyone. But he realized that the online banking also wasn't accessible. And so what do tech people do when they get a bee in their bonnet? They take to their blog.
Yeah.
And so the way Joe tells it, he had this like blog that only like a few people read. And he blogged and he's like, challenge, accessibility must go mainstream. And he talked about the fact that developers needed to understand fundamentals. Like they didn't even know what a screen reader was. And so he demanded that there be a global day of awareness around accessibility. So let's put that to the side. So as I mentioned before, I'd been working in accessibility since 2006. And one of the problems I was trying to solve for was I wanted to make accessibility quote unquote accessible to your everyday designer or developer. So I was just trying to figure out different ways. In 2009, I ended up attending something called Accessibility Camp DC at the MLK Library in Washington, DC. And I realized if you promise to provide free food on a weekend, tech people will show up. And they did. They came to this event, and it was pretty ruckus. They showed up. They signed up for events. They signed up for sessions and whatever. And I said, well, we're Canadian. We're a little bit more organized than that. We can't allow for too much chaos. But I approached Yuta Trevoranis, who is such an amazing inclusive design leader back in Toronto. And I said to her, I'd like to run an accessibility camp at OCAD, which is at the time was the Ontario College of Art and Design. It's now called OCAD University. And I said, could I run this event at your venue? Anyway, long story short, we ran Accessibility Camp Toronto, and there were so many people who showed up for pizza and for sessions and stuff. So I had that one event under my belt, right? And then so I was like, this is amazing. We got to figure out other ways. And so here I was uncharacteristically at home on a Saturday night. And I was just like trolling Twitter as one does. And I just came upon this tweet totally by happenstance. It was this auto-generated tweet from WordPress that said, this guy named Joe Devon just tweeted, wrote this blog post called Challenge, Accessibility Has to Go Mainstream. I'm like, well, what is this? Who is this? And I activated it with my enter key. And I read the blog post and I read everything about it, and I immediately responded, and the rest is history. If you go to globalaccessibilityawarenessday.org and activate the About link, you can read the actual blog post and my tweet back to him. That's the history. And then in 2012, so he and I are two of the busiest people that you could ever think of. So we're the wrong people to be running this ship. But we just said, okay, let's choose a date. And I think we said like May 9th. And then we set about to just calling our friends in the communities that we work in. Mm-hmm. So Joe was heavily connected with the Silicon Beach startup crowd and elsewhere. And I knew folks who worked in accessibility. And we just like said, hey, we just decided to do this. Would you be willing to run this event? And Diane, we had some amazing stuff. We had Shilpi Kapoor, who got the government of India to run this like day-long conference in Delhi
Oh my
about
goodness.
accessibility. We had the digital accessibility center in Wales run an event. We had folks in Australia. I ran an event. Joe ran an event in LA, and then other people just stepped forward. Because if I don't say that, people are going to say, "You forgot my event." I don't mean to, but there were a bunch of people who just did it, and here we are in our 10th year, and I think we're almost at 200 events at this point. So if you
Wow.
go to our website and you click on events, you can see what you can do tomorrow, Thursday, the actual day of Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Although there have been some people who've been celebrating all month. Amazon does Global Accessibility Awareness Month called GAM. I participated with them last year. And Tim Cook and the folks at Apple do stuff. He gave us a shout out today on Twitter. So while I was flying over to Vegas, I tweeted him back thanking him. So, and Satya and everyone at Microsoft, who are the parents of LinkedIn, where I work, they do stuff. And people, big or small, people are having lunches there. Before the pandemic, people were doing all kinds of stuff. Now, a lot of it is obviously relegated to online things.
Yeah.
But we'll take what we can get, right? And
Right.
being online like this, like we're probably, Diane, you and I are probably reaching people who wouldn't ordinarily show up at an event about accessibility because it's so like they can just do it from home, right?
Right. That was the one upside of the pandemic, being able
Absolutely.
to make connections like this with events that wouldn't otherwise be virtual.
Yeah. Look at this. Can you see this big bottle of water?
We can see this big bottle of water.
I'm trying to cover the label. I don't want to do like product placement or anything.
But you're not drinking the GAD cocktail?
Oh, that's tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay.
We think we've settled on Toki as the base liquor. So I'll tweet about it tomorrow once we figure it all out. But we think that the base is Toki liquor or Toki whiskey.
For those of you who are interested in finding out the recipe of Jennison's awesome cocktail, follow him on Twitter. And we'll post links to Global Accessibility Awareness Day, the site, as well as Accessibility Camp, which we'll talk more about in a bit in the chat. So one thing I've heard about, and I'm curious about this as well, I heard that Global Accessibility Awareness Day has a company pledge.
Yeah. Well, it's less of a company pledge per se, and more we call it the GAD Pledge, because what ended up happening, there's an amazing organization called WebAIM, WEBAIM, that's been using the top 1 million websites, the ranking, to take a look at how accessible the world is today. Now, last year it was like 98% of all homepages had at least one accessibility issue on it, which is so depressing. This year, I think it was like 97.8, so we're not doing that much better. But what came out of it was a lot of these websites were powered by open source frameworks. And so Joe wanted to get those frameworks, if we could get those frameworks to create accessible components, and people honored those components and didn't muck them up or extend them, that we would do something about accessibility. So Facebook actually was our first organization that took the GAD Pledge through with their React Native framework, which is for mobile apps. And what they did is they committed to making not only their code base or their components accessible, but also the documentation and their examples and all of that stuff. So we really want to thank the folks at Facebook and at React Native for doing that. I am happy to say that the next open source framework that has taken the GAD Pledge, this is breaking news, Diane. Are you ready?
Okay, yep.
Are you like, where's
everyone, you're hearing it here first.
Where's the news ticker music, right? Ember.js is taking the GAD Pledge now. Ember.js, now many props to the entire leadership at Ember, but particularly people I know, Tom Dale and the amazing Melanie Sumner, who is their accessibility lead. They've already been doing amazing stuff with Ember. already to make the Ember.js framework accessible. And at the Ember.js conference, they are so surprised at how many of their talks are actually have accessibility pieces incorporated into it. But anyway, they are committed to continue, because we're all on a journey, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's React Native, whether it's Ember. We are all on a mission. There's no end state for accessibility. The concept of something being 100% and completely accessible, full stop, and nothing has to be done to continue to make it accessible, that just doesn't exist anymore because of the agile life that we live in. Now, I say that, but that is not to give anyone an excuse. Do not interpret what I just said as saying, oh, then we could short shrimp. No. All I'm saying is, in those sprints that everyone does, you throw stuff into production, some things might break. But am I ever going to say that it's acceptable to throw stuff into production that's not accessible? No, absolutely not. You are just introducing tech debt into production. You are making it so that people with disabilities or impairments sometimes may have to ask someone to give them a hand performing a transaction path. I had to have someone help me download my W-2 because the website, the portal we use was simply not accessible. So I had to find, thank God I have a buddy who I'm not like, we're cool like that, but I had to give him control of my computer through Zoom in order to download my W-2 because I couldn't figure out how to do that. Not everyone has that good fortune of having friends to do that. But why should we have to compromise our privacy and security because someone decided not to care about accessibility during their sprints?
Right.
And that's serious. Like, I joke about it a little bit, but the reality is no one should be in a situation where they need to give up their security or their privacy or their independence because someone, a PM or a project manager, or frankly, an executive somewhere said, I don't care, we need to get this out the door yesterday.
Right. And this is why having you share your experience, Jennison, is just so important. And for the speakers who are going to be speaking later tonight.
You have amazing speakers, by the way.
We have an amazing lineup of speakers. They're so excited.
I wish they were coming to speak at Accessibility Camp one day, maybe next year.
Well, the speakers, you're on stage listening next year. Speak at Accessibility Awareness Camp. But no, I'm like serious now. I know that a lot of what happens when we talk about exclusion, it is definitely not intentional. And that's why it's so important to bring the people in that we're designing for and design with them.
Can I just say, Diane, but that's to a point. Right. I have lots of time for the average designer developer for whom, through no fault of their own, they were not exposed to accessibility in college. Thank goodness in the States we have an organization called Teach Access, which is looking to make sure that 1 million students by 2030 are going to get basic accessibility training in computer science, engineering, design, or related discipline. So check out teachaccess.org for that. But for anyone else who knowingly puts stuff into production, because accessibility has been around since 1998-99. Like the first web content accessibility has been there. So it's not like it's brand new. It's just people are just getting hip to it.
Yeah, exactly. And I know as a designer, I still feel so new to the accessibility space. And I have just honestly been incredibly humbled by how much I was unaware of. And I'm curious, what advice do you have for people who are interested or looking to get into the space? I know that you've mentioned a few resources, but where can someone get started?
Join my Meetup group, the one I co-lead. That's no. And I say that half jokingly, but not, because part of it is just networking with people who've done it, right? So I will say this to everyone who's joining this amazing event: reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd be more than happy to spend an hour with you just talking it out. If you're interested in coming into the field, follow me on Twitter at Jennison. Like, that's the first step. Follow the A11Y. It's not Ali, by the way. It's A11Y hashtag on Twitter, and just observe the conversation that's happening there. There's a bunch of courses out there, like Udacity has a course. I believe W3 Schools might have a course.
Yeah.
and things like that. If you use your favorite search engine and type accessibility training course, you'll find any number of things. But as a first start, I'm inviting everyone to reach out to me, and I will, depending on where you are, like in where you're thinking and stuff, whether you're an engineer or a designer or whatnot, I'll help you. Like I'll get you going. Just buy me dinner one day, and I'll be happy. Or actually, no. In all seriousness, like if I have managed to get you to think about accessibility a little bit more, the day that you raise accessibility and get it on your roadmap or get it on your project plan, you will make me so happy.
That's amazing. Everyone check that out. Our volunteer Carol posted the link in the chat, Teach Access.
And also, Teach Access, WebAIM, WEBAIM.org. Start there as well. There's tons of resources at that website. And if you go, by the way, to the w3c.org/WAI, which is the Web Accessibility Initiative. One of the most powerful resources they have is something called the before and after, where they have an example of a really inaccessible experience, and then you do the after, and you can see like, oh God, oh wow, if I implement these guidelines, this is how more inclusive I can make my stuff.
I'm going to have to bookmark that resource for my own self. That's amazing.
You go. Look at you.
Like writing that down.
Right.
Great.
Well, first you're going to have a conversation with Hoppin.
Yes. Yeah. First we're talking to Hoppin's not getting a lot of love during the session. And so you're organizing Accessibility Awareness Camp, which is on the 22nd?
Accessibility Camp Bay Area.
Sorry,
yes.
Accessibility Camp Bay Area. Oh my goodness.
It's all good. It all muddles together. And it's being held, typically we hold it at LinkedIn in San Francisco, but of course we're not doing that this year. But if you go to accessibilitycampbay.org, all one word, we've got 18 sessions. We got 18 sessions. It's free to attend. And what's nice is I don't have to put a waiting list in place. This is one of the only years that will happen, because when we go in person, I have physical constraints. So I have to close things at about 200 people. Now you can have more people show up, and we might have a contest if you register, but there's 18 talks. We've got a product manager talking about the TalkBack screen reader and how he, as a product manager, made that, and how he navigated his way through to making TalkBack and user requirements important on the Android app. We've got someone who has a speech disability talking about how to make stuff more accessible for someone who stutters, who has other speech disabilities or impairments. We've got some people talking about test automation tools, all kinds of things. There's 18 sessions. Come join us. It's deliberately less formal than a stuffy conference. We emphasize conversation over presentation. And this is my 7th one, so I think I know what I'm doing. And we usually have this really amazing after party, but we're going to have to relegate that to a Zoom room, unfortunately, this time.
Good. I'll definitely be there too. I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. And we also have the Meetup group. So meetup.com/A11YBay. That's for more monthly get-togethers, talking about all kinds of things. So tomorrow, at 4:30 p.m. I hope I say this, but I say this kind of guiltily because I know you've got so many good talks tomorrow. But from 4:30 to 6:30 Pacific time, we are going to be holding the largest meetup in the world on that day tomorrow, talking about accessibility. We got 3 amazing people who are going to talk. We've got someone who's going to talk about what it's like to work in Silicon Valley with a hidden disability. We're going to talk about robots and accessibility, and we're going to talk about the future, like what are some of the future trends in accessibility. So that's tomorrow. And no, we're not recording it, so you got to kind of be there to enjoy it. And we will have some big announcements to make, both from a Global Accessibility Awareness Day perspective and also from an A11Y Bay perspective. We might have a contest tomorrow, dinner with me over Hoppin. No, I'm kidding. We love Hoppin. We just need you to come onto the journey.
We just need more products to be accessible.
Yeah. In general. Yeah. And look at the touchscreen kiosks. here in Vegas. What am I going to do with all my money? I guess I won't be spending it in any casinos.
Nope. Just all going to that Japanese Toki whiskey.
Toki whiskey. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Great. Jennison, it was so great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Absolutely.
You have touched on so many important parts why it's so important to create a virtual world that is accessible to all. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to see if we have any audience questions.
Great. I've got my lawyer on redial just in case I may need to go through that. I'm all ready.
Okay.
I'm all ready. Bring it.
Just seeing one question. Yes, Rachel, all sessions will be recorded. So after the conference has, everyone can access that on the Inclusive Product Week website.
Well, hopefully certain vendors who will now remain nameless will listen to the recording, right, Diane?
Yeah. We'll send an anonymous recording over.
Yeah. To an unnamed company.
Great. So we don't have any questions. We'll go ahead and close it out. Maybe you can leave us with your favorite jazz recommendation, since I've heard that you're quite a fan.
I am. For anyone who ever goes to New York City, skip all of those jazz clubs. They're great, but they're overpriced. And go to my favorite coal oven pizzeria that's been at the same place since 1969. It's called Arturo's at 106 West Houston. So you get amazing Italian food and amazing live jazz. Just ask for the owner, Lisa, and tell her that the Canadian sent you. I've been going there since 94. That makes me really old. Like, you think I'm joking? You think I'm joking?
Well, it's vague and specific. Like the Canadian sent you.
Yeah, because she calls me whenever I walk into the place. She's like, "It's the Canadian." Just a funny story about that, if I could. This is why I've endeared myself to this place. Picture it. Sorry, it was 1996. I'm walking through that area with my sister. We go in for a drink on a Saturday afternoon, just walking around that part of New York City, and we walk in and they're playing like piped in jazz at that point. And the owner, the person who's now I learned was the owner, she walks over to me and without skipping a beat, she asks me, would I like a Braille menu? And that, I don't really need a Braille menu, right?
Right.
Because I do, because I'm a Braille reader and I will always promote it. But my sister was there, so she walked over with the nicest, it was a hardcover Braille menu with prices in it that are probably reflective of when that Braille menu was written. But it's those small gestures that'll endear me to it. So if you own a restaurant website and you make your menu accessible online, because I typically get like this image of text, which I can't read, so I'm not going to go to that restaurant.
Right.
I'll take my money elsewhere. It's those little gestures. If I find a website that is accessible to me, I'm going to keep using it, and I'm going to tell my friends about it, whether they have a disability or not. And that makes a difference.
There you go. Do you have any restaurant owners in the audience? Make your sites accessible.
Yeah, tell the people at Bento Box to make their website in a box thing accessible. And don't use overlays. Oh, did I say that out loud? We won't go there.
Yeah.
But email me if you want to talk about it. I'm not going to trash a company in particular, by the way. I just think the concept of AI being able to solve every accessibility issue on a website or a mobile app is just factually impossible. And you make it difficult for those of us with disabilities or impairments because these overlays pop up and they kind of block, they give us a different experience altogether. We want to use the same website as everyone else because how do I know if I'm getting a suboptimal experience? How do I know if I'm not missing a feature? Because I'm being brought to a different experience.
There you go.
Was I getting controversial?
No, this is really great. These are things that we all need to be very cognizant of.
And stay tuned tomorrow for the big announcement. The Diamond webinar at 11:30. We'll be talking about it there. I don't think anyone will be up at 2:30 in the morning when I'm broadcasting in Hong Kong, but
a few of us
talking about it there. I'll be broadcasting to Johannesburg, to South Africa, to a couple of other places tomorrow. If you go to my Twitter handle, I'll be talking about that. Whoa, what was that noise? Did you sneeze?
Oh no, there was a door that's closed. Oh, okay, great. Sorry.
Do you have questions?
No, the door is in our apartment, just like kind of open
Oh
and
my
shut.
God. Are you sure? Are you sure it wasn't the vendor that we won't name anymore?
No, it's a vendor that we shall not name names. Sorry. Sorry. While we were chatting about, I just saw a couple more questions
Oh.
pop up. So Kate wants to know if you could repeat the name of the meetup group.
Yes. So it's the Bay Area Accessibility and Inclusive Design Meetup, or in short, A11Y Bay. And we're on Meetup.
Great. And we'll post that information too in the chat as well.
And then if she was asking about the seventh annual LinkedIn hosted Accessibility Camp Bay Area, that is on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Did I mention 18 sessions?
You did mention 18 awesome sessions, and we'll also have that information.
Thank you.
Absolutely recommend. I've heard amazing things, and I'll be attending this year, and I'm super excited about it.
The fact that we've made it to seven times has to say something.
Right?
Come on now.
There you go. Plus, there's an after party, which I'm excited about.
Well, yeah, next year when we go back in person.
Right, yeah.
No.
Craig has a question.
Sure.
You mentioned overlays. What are some anti-patterns developers and designers may not be aware of?
So just in general, so some of the anti-patterns are things like using color alone to indicate an error. So I had to use a website once and I entered the credit card number incorrectly. And I kept hitting the submit button and nothing would happen. It turns out, because I had to ask a seeing person, that the credit card field ended up turning, like it was red. And that was the only way that they knew something was wrong. Another thing is when you programmatically control focus. This happens a lot with like websites with sign-in pages. Or things like that. So it will automatically bring focus to the username field. Now, from a productivity perspective, that might be great. But what you're essentially doing is you are making it so that the person who uses a screen reader doesn't even know if there's any other important links or information above where you've manufactured bringing focus. So those are two patterns which I want to bring attention to. And for you engineers who've gone to boot camps, which will remain nameless, where you're using divs and spans to create controls, stop it. Because the fact is, as someone who is a screen reader user, and also for screen voice recognition folks, if the name, role, and state of a control is not programmatically being exposed to assistive technologies, then we can't use it. So really quick, I've been like, I fly a lot, and those websites where you purchase internet, sometimes the checkboxes, it won't even say it's a checkbox, but I know because it says like, do you accept the terms and conditions?
Right.
Now, I'm not talking about that hotel website, which will remain nameless. But this one, I can actually hit the space, double tap on it, and it will check the checkbox, even though I don't know it's a checkbox. But that's because someone decided not to hook up the traits and stuff. So just please, everyone, test your stuff. Like take that extra time to test your stuff. If you can, involve people with disabilities. Heck, just like get in touch with me. I'll take a look at it, or I'll find someone who will. So those are some of the anti-patterns. I kind of went on a bit of a side journey. But yeah, like those kinds of things. And just check your color contrast. There's a lot of people who are colorblind and other people with print disabilities who cannot read stuff with poor color contrast. Sorry, I got on a soapbox. Diane, bring me in here.
Great tips and awesome
bring me in.
Craig. No, this is great. We just want Jennison. We have another question. Someone wants to know, what accessibility advice do you have for a designer who's building a design system?
Oh, what advice do I have? Well, the one thing I'm going to say is there's this myth that if you have a design system that's completely that's accessible, sorry, because I don't use the word completely, but that's accessible, people think that all you need to do is just like drop all the controls, all the components onto a page, or just implement the design system and voila, you get a completely accessible experience. I hate to tell you, no. You still have to test things, because sometimes if you put two perfectly accessible components onto the same page, they don't necessarily play nicely together. And then just make sure that you're testing all of your components, and make sure you have documentation, and make sure you have a process in place for where a product team, if they want to kind of extend a component, that they have a way that they could check that component in to be retested, to make sure that what accessibility you've built in, it has not been broken. There are some great tools out there. Microsoft has some amazing, their inclusive design toolkit is out there. Carbon is a great open source from IBM. Material Design is another one. Of course, as I start naming some, I'm going to be accused of forgetting others. I think there's one called Oatmeal. Help me out here, Diane. Diane doesn't know this, but Diane and I are going to be going on the road to talk about accessibility, because I think we have good shtick going. Do you agree, Diane?
Going to Vegas, yeah.
Do you want to come to Mongolia with me next year?
I would love to.
They're making Ulaanbaatar an inclusive city for people with disabilities. So I might be spending GAD next year in Ulaanbaatar.
Okay, in that case, we are all going to Mongolia next year for.
Well, no, you can't, because I want you folks to run this event again.
No, that's
product. Come on now.
Great.
Stay on message.
I have one last question.
Yes. And then my lawyer is calling.
Yeah.
Apparently, I wasn't supposed to mention overlay.
Do you know what your social security number is? No.
Whoa.
Yeah. We have a question. How do you test accessibility?
Right. The number one thing you can do is use your keyboard alone. Make sure you can tab to and interact with every focusable element. So don't use the mouse. And then on mobile devices, turn on either TalkBack or VoiceOver. It's so amazing that stuff is built into the phones. Mm-hmm. And then just swipe around and make sure with everything, you're not just hearing button, button, button. You're actually hearing like button or discard button. Do you know how frustrating it is to just hear button, button, button? Like, am I really going to double tap on a button where all I know is it's a button? Like, I need to know what it does. Or sometimes it would just say like, how do I know that that's a button if it doesn't? Anyway, so those are some easy stuff. There are other automated tools. Events has a tool. AxeCore is a free tool. Microsoft AI or AI is an amazing tool. WebAIM's Wave tool, those are all free tools. Chrome has as an extension, so there's no excuses not to be able to test for accessibility. All of that stuff is available. And I know that VMware is going to be open sourcing their tool as well, if they haven't already. So very easy. There's another tool called AccessLint. See, I'm getting all kinds of don't forget my tool. So I'm naming as many as I can. Help me out here, Diane.
No, this is great. That's
Figma. There's plugins for designers.
Lots of plugins.
Figma, a lot of stuff. But honestly, reach out to me, Jennison Asuncion on LinkedIn, at Jennison on Twitter. Mm-hmm. Jennison.asuncion@gmail.com. Oh my God, I'm giving away everything. But get in touch with me. Seriously, this is the way we're going to, if you need to ask questions in order to do amazing stuff, then ask questions. Because I'd rather you ask the question than not do anything at all.
Which is an incredibly generous offer. You're going to get a lot of prototypes, Jennison, in your LinkedIn inbox.
Hey, so here's the dirty little secret. None of the prototyping tools are actually accessible to screen reader users.
Oh, well.
So, and I'm not going to name any of them.
We might need to start naming some of them.
I can't. I'm not allowed. Right. Not publicly anyway.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, unless there's underlying HTML, mm-hmm. My screen reading software won't read it. Now, what I used to do when I was at the Royal Bank of Canada, and even at LinkedIn, people just need to describe to me what the interaction is, and then I'll just ask questions like, what do you do for a keyboard user? Or what happens when focus goes there? I've been doing this long enough that I know some of the key questions to ask.
And that's really great. And there are so many resources that you provided for us, and I'm seeing them pop up in the chat, which is great.
Awesome.
Fortunately,
globalaccessibilityawarenessday.org.
There we go. Yeah, I'll have all of those links in the chat, everyone, which will be in the stage chat. So if you have any questions about the camp that's happening this Saturday and just how you can get involved and get in touch with Jennison, check there. Thank you so much.
Oh, this has been a blast.
This has been so fun.
This has been a blast. We got the camera working.
Camera's working. Against all odds, figured out Hopin.
I didn't name them. I didn't say anything. Hey, but in all seriousness, if anyone from Hopin is listening, like, feel free if you want to reach out. I'd be more than happy to just I'll give you folks a hand, because if we need, here's the reality. We as people with disabilities need choices. Like, why should we always have to use something that rhymes with room, right?
Right.
Or light. Or lean.
Or Google Meet.
Or sheet. Like, we should have as many options as anyone else to use whatever tools we want. That's all I'm saying. By the way, yes, and designers, particularly, Microsoft was the one who said it like a couple of years ago, and this is not to be whatever, but the most egregious accessibility issues happen in design. So if we can catch them at the design mock stage, using plugins, or when you annotate your design mocks, if we can catch those accessibility issues, then it's so much easier.
Yeah.
Do you like how we get serious?
It's so great. I'm loving the ebb and flows. This is amazing. Thank you again.
Thank you
so much. This has been such a great session.
And good luck with the rest of the conference.
Yes, thank you. And you as well. Have fun in Vegas. I hope you figure out the GAD cocktail and let us all know.
Yes, follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter.
Follow Jennison on Twitter.
Yes, and by the way, if you're looking for a job in accessibility, A11Y Jobs on Twitter. And if you want to stay tuned on events about accessibility, A11Y Events. I run both of those.
There you go.
Thank you.
Great. This has been so great for everybody who has just joined us.
Oh no, we can't repeat this chaos.
We can't repeat all of this.
Oh my God,
there are so many great sessions that are going to be starting now. So head over to the sessions area and jump in. Everybody, thank you so much. Jennison, thank you.
Thank you, Diana. And by the way, happy early Global Accessibility Awareness Day, everyone.
There you go. Yes.
Happy GAD.
Happy GAD. Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your conference. Bye.